Ozonics Killerwinds podcast back again. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
We have got a special guest, probably the most special guest that we get to have.
Yes.
Yep, we've got Scott Elrod, the CEO and the owner of Ozonics. Scott, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time and dealing with my I'm not near as good as probably most of your guests that you bring on, so I appreciate you coaching me through this.
It's kind of funny because, you know, when you do the podcast and it feels like the setup of everything, it always takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But when we know it's going to be Scott on the podcast, I feel like there's a little bit of heightened like nervousness, just like triple check everything, make sure everything's right.
I know, like normally we're really scrambling, getting everything ready. Today we were sitting here, we're like,
yeah,
all right, here we go.
I know. Usually we're just kind of right down to the minute, you know, with everything going on. But today he came into my office. We're doing this at like 10 in the morning. He came into my office at like 9:40. He's like, hey, you want to get everything set up? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we were way ahead of the game today.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
No, but the whole idea of having Scott on here today, we did a podcast a few weeks ago introducing, we had the opportunity and we're really excited to have a new Ozonics on the table.
Yep.
And got to introduce and talk about the HR600. And again, we went through features, advantages, benefits, you know, everything that we could talk about and what we know about with this HR600, just trying to let people hear about it and see it. But I think the cool thing about having Scott on here is this is Scott's baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, I don't even know if you could put a number on the amount of hours, time, sweat, tears that have gone into this design and the innovation and where we're at with this. And so that's what I think we really want to jump into today is getting to have the guy that really, he's the mind behind it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So to really do a deep dive into all the different features of the HR600.
Yep.
You know, so that's the whole idea today.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty excited to see where this conversation goes. Honestly, I think there's going to be there's a lot of stuff I think I've heard from Scott as this process has gone on. But a lot of times where you and I kind of come into this is when kind of towards the end, right? When it comes to like, hey, get this out there, run it, break it. You know, what else do we need to do? You know what I mean? Really kind of fine tuning and sharpening that edge. You know what I mean? So let's just jump right in, Scott. If you could just, for starters, obviously when you pick this thing up and look at right off the bat, you know, I feel like the thing that I've been saying is this is an entirely new animal.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like nothing that we've done before, right? For me, it really screams innovation.
Yep.
There's just everything new. So if you just want to kind of jump right in just off the bat, really from the design, the platform, the look of it, if you want to take it from there.
Well, I mean, you know, the journey of this thing, you know, back in 2005, you know, after the concept of Ozonics was developed, I started the process of developing the very first Ozonics unit, which was a tin can and some wing nuts and a motorcycle battery and a 10-foot cord, and shocking myself out in my barn. And because I'm, you know, basically I'm a dentist at the end of the day trying to understand the electronics. And so, you know, the reiterations and generations of what we created over the years, each and every one of these innovations is because at the end of the day, I mean, I love to hunt. I mean, I love the outdoors, everything about it. I love the outdoors. And so it's like I was always trying to figure out how, you know, selfishly as an outdoorsman, how could I make this better at the end of the day for me, right? You know, how could I get a better result for me when I was out there in the woods? And over the years, there's a lot of people that are much more intuitive than I am that ended up being our consumer. We started out as a few hundred people. Now we have a couple 100,000 end users that are out there using the product. And, you know, many of them just kind of like, oh, we really believe you've found something really uniquely special, but could you possibly do this? And so our R&D department is now a couple 100,000 strong. And so when you go places and the emails and people coming over and they talk to you and, hey, is there a way that we could get a little bit more battery life? Hey, could you possibly make it quiet? Have you ever thought about this? And I mean, we've had everybody from anesthesiologists to mechanical engineers to, you know, you name it, come in to give us feedback over the years. And so you design products of when you listen to these end users of what you believe would truly resonate for all of our clients that are using and entrusting our product out in the field to make their experiences out there better. And so this is kind of the accumulation of that thus
Mm-hmm.
far. Are we constantly trying to innovate? Are we trying to still keep on going? That's an everyday journey. But this journey here began really in 2019 for this product right here. And I can't begin to tell you how much time, energy, and resources we've spent in trying to make a product that would give us something that was much more durable, quieter. And at the end of the day, I really want to scale the company into something super special and, be able to touch each and every individual that hunts and is in the outdoors all over the United States, Canada, all over the world, Africa. And you can't scale a company if people are constantly having to, send their product and you refurbish. You poor folks up there in Mason City, you guys kind of oversee that whole division up there. And
Yep.
if everybody was sending their units, it would just absolutely overwhelm us. It already does to some degree. And so I'm like, we got to find some way of being able, if people are going to make this kind of investment in it, I need it to operate as close to 100% as it possibly can each and every time they go in the woods. And so the best way to do it was to find a way of making this removable coil happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we hired another group of engineers, and I think that we've gone through 30 some prototypes to be able to finally get it where it would consistently get the proper fit
Yeah.
and give us all the safety factors we needed, and at the same time give them a consistent result for them and something that they could do in their own hands.
Right.
And so, that's where that was one of the most critical components of this, is being able to have the consumer get their product as close to 100% on demand when they want it without having to send it back to us. They can control the product's kind of destiny. So that was one of the primary drivers. And then all the stuff in regards to making it quieter and more efficient, all that stuff, believe it or not, just kind of evolved as, we put our heads together and we were able to create what we created today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot, and there's, like you said, I mean, he's hitting the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
We hear it from people all the time. We hear people say, well, how long is it going to last? And one of the things that I felt like Scott has always been very upfront about is that when we talk about that optimum ozone output, right? The Ozonics are going to produce, those coils are going to produce ozone way longer than you're ever going to hunt with it.
Yeah.
Way longer, right? But the fact of the matter is that what happens with that coil over the course of time is when you're pushing air over it all the time, dust and debris can collect on it.
Exactly.
It can get dirty. And that optimum ozone output, it starts to fall. Right. So what we've tried to do in the past, again, and Scott, a lot of kudos to you for just being so honest and upfront. It's like, hey, they're not going to produce that optimum ozone output forever. It's not always going to stay at 100%. So that's where the refurbishment program really, I think, evolved from. We talk a lot about, we just had Susie on the podcast, right? Customer service at times is a service to the customer.
Yep.
And that's, I think, where the refurbishment program came in. It's like, hey, we want you hunting with it. We want you getting downwind of deer and getting away with it year after year after year.
Yeah.
And so that was the whole idea, is 3 or 4 years, you could send it in and get it refurbished. Well, we talk about the problem is there's a lag.
Yeah.
Right?
Then you're not hunting with it.
Yeah. If you have your Ozonics in your hand and you're hunting with it, great. But if you send it in, it's not there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, now it's literally just those 2 tabs. It comes right out. You can purchase extra replaceable coils. And whenever you start to feel like that, we talk about if you all of a sudden you start getting winded by deer where you didn't before, you know what I mean? Even to be able to pull it out and look at the coil, you know what I mean? To see if it's dusty, or get a can of dry compressed air and spray it off.
Clean it.
Yep. So again, it puts a lot more of that power and availability in the customer's hands.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, just with the design of it, when you clip it in there, it's a very sure fit too. Like it feels like it's supposed to be there. It's good. So I liked what Scott said about, making sure they took the right steps and all the different versions of it, making sure that the fit is good so that every single time it's going to work when you clip it in.
Even like what you probably, if you're looking at it on the website, we've tried to talk about as best we can in the videos, but talking about the iterations and the versions, there's little arrows so that you try to make sure you put the coil in the right way. If you try to put it in upside down, there's actually these little bars that it's keyed. Mm-hmm. So if you try to put it in upside down, it won't go.
Right.
I mean, you just can't force it. You follow me? So it only goes in one way. Yep. I mean, I know one of the things along the way, Scott, when you started talking about this, I was like, man, how are you going to make clips that are really going to be able to clip in but not come loose? I'm like, gosh, that seems like that's going to be a tall order.
Yep.
Mission accomplished. I mean, it does exactly it's wild because you think it clips in and it really, really stays, but it can easily be undone too, which seems like you couldn't get both.
Yeah.
But it's a lot like our batteries, right? The batteries, they come out, but man, when you clip them in, they're clipped in.
Yeah.
It's not coming out.
Yeah. You have that, for me, it's funny to say it like this, but that simple just click, it's like confidence, like boom, okay, yep, it's in there, it's good, it'll work.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was a huge part of the emphasis. So when you start designing products and you start doing these things, you don't go on an arbitrary journey. You write down a priority list, 1, 2, 3. What are the key things that when I go out there, our clients go out there, what's going to make them more effective, thus give them more opportunity? What's going to create an environment where they're in control of it a great deal more, and what's going to make the product as safe for them and also the environment they're working in. Mm-hmm. And so, like little things, like when we were putting the things in there and seeing that, and I was just like, we need to go and we need to get some lights underneath this unit, right? Because there's nothing worse. I mean, I'm 58 now. I'm not 28. And so when I climb up in those trees, and I have a few people counting on me that I don't take a wipe out of that tree or something stupid happen. And so I'm like, there's some value is that I always wear these red headlamps. And there's so much value now when you set this thing up, and you can either go to your app or go to the button on the underside and hit that red light and just have it illuminate. It just kind of creates a shower of red light around you, pointing down, not out all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it really makes an environment for you getting set up, whether you're setting up in that blind or whether you're setting up, in the tree. It creates an environment that's a lot safer too, for our clients. And so, I mean, there's just all these little features that we were going through, and to try to make the unit as bulletproof and highly functional as we possibly could. That's what we did. I mean, every step of this, and there was no one step, unfortunately, that was just, slam dunk, we got this. Every one of them was like, we do it 1, 2, 3. And, like I told you, the coil was like 30 sometimes until we got it right. And so you figure 30 some molds, and there's a lot of effort that goes into making these things. It seems like they shouldn't, but they do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've said this before. I feel like when you look at Ozonics, when you just look at it, and we hear people say this, like Scott was saying earlier, when I look at this HR600, and we've said this on the videos, we heard you,
Yeah, exactly.
Like I think we're going to go to the shows and people are going to go, man, I wondered if you guys were going to do that. Well, we talked about that. You know what I mean? Like we heard you, but I think the crazy thing is what we also hear is like, well, it's just a coil, some buttons and a battery. And it's like, yeah, you're right. But go home and try to make one of these things. It's just not that easy. Yeah. Sometimes I think in Ozonics is like tennis. Tennis looks like it's easy on TV, but whenever I've tried to play tennis, I just end up hitting grand slams over the fence. You know what I mean? I just can't keep it in between the lines. Oh, yeah. I can't even get it over the net. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or golf too, man. Yeah. I'd love to be able to just drive her out down the middle, but I'm just doing the old slice hook. One way or the other. Yep. So there is just so much. One of the things too, Scott, that you said there that I really liked, and I would love to have you kind of go into deeper detail about, is how, you're talking about, the innovation evolved, right? The idea of starting with that replaceable coil, and then how, 20% more ozone, 25% quieter, 30% more battery life. That kind of bubbled out of this and evolved out of that. Can you talk about a little bit of that and how that incorporated into design with the blower and all that stuff?
Yeah, well, when you start looking at, the development of the removable coil, more so than ever, we started to evaluate our coil system, right? The actual place in which the magic happens, the oxidation process occurs. And what we realized is that we weren't optimizing the efficiency of our unit just because we didn't fully understand the process of back pressure and airflow. And so we started the process of trying to figure out how can we both activate the backside of the coil, the top, the bottom, but the front, by creating a turbulent base flow on the inside of the unit. And even when you look at the honeycomb portion of the front of the unit, all those things are developed in such a way to create just enough back pressure to maximize the efficiency of the coil. And therefore, you don't have to push air quite as hard to increase the concentration coming out the unit.
Right.
And so there's like you see those drawings of those people with those cars and those air tunnels, and they watch how airflow goes over the car.
Yep.
What we're doing the same things on how do you maximize the airflow in this system. And so the whole internal aspect of it is a patented process of figuring out back pressure flow rates to get the concentrations that we need in a downstream environment for our clients. And so, yeah, it was a true journey, and part of it you got to be involved in.
Yeah.
I remember when I was developing, and we were developing that chute, and I literally had Cole up there because he had an analyzer up there, and I had this brain shot happen one day, and I'm like, well, I wonder if I do this. And so Cole was gracious enough to start working with duct tape and changing opening dimensions and this was a while ago. And but basically it proved the concept, and that then developed basically the way the internal workings of this unit are now occurring.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, at that point it was just a 3D printed version.
Yeah.
Right? And we had the faceplate, right? And so, like I said, Scott started diving into the back pressure idea and all that stuff. So we started necking down the front. If you look at our other units, it's just really, the whole thing is open.
It's open, yeah.
And even what Scott's talking about there, it's really interesting because just like he's talking about, and just so people kind of get what he's trying to describe there, you see that coil and you think about a car in a wind tunnel and that wind is going over it, right? Well, when the air hits this coil, the air hits it and it goes over it, it goes under it. You follow me?
Yep.
Well, from a lot of the research that the engineers were figuring out, that air was hitting it going over and under, but the part of the coil that wasn't really getting used very much was the back side of the coil.
Right.
You follow me?
Yep.
Well, once that air goes past it, it's already passed. So then, like he's describing, creating back pressure with the way that it's necked down on the front to try to create a situation that creates turbulence that actually bumps the air on the front, maybe gets it to come back, and then it hits and we activate the front part of that coil.
Right. Yep.
So again, all of a sudden, to his point, you think about a coil and ozone like a fire, okay? And if you want to stoke the fire, you blow on the fire, you harder.
Yep.
Well, with the way that we're doing this with the coil now, we're optimizing it and we're creating that back pressure. We don't have to stoke the fire. We can actually make the unit quieter, but we'd slow the fan down, making the unit quieter, but still and produce more ozone because we're not just using the top, the back, and the bottom. We're using all of it.
Right.
And so it's just a whole, like I said, it was really fun for me to be a part of that. When Scott kind of like said, he kind of had this brain explosion, and he called. I mean, it's so awesome when he calls. He's super excited. He's like, "Hey, try this." And so diving into that, and then for me to see it and go, "Oh my gosh, that's going to change everything."
Oh yeah,
and it has.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's why we can. When people are calling and they're like, "Well, how are you getting that?" It's like, dude, there's a lot that goes into it, man. And that's just the kind of the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and in the coil design that's in that removable pack, comparison to our coils of the past, is a completely, totally re-engineered coil-based system.
Absolutely.
So we used to have a coil on the outside and then a fragmented, metal component on the inside of the glass tube. So now we don't just have a glass tube, it's actually kind of a crystalline tube.
Yep.
Surrounded with a coil inside of it, tightly woven inside of it. So it's no longer just fragmented, a metal component. It's an actual coil on the inside and a coil on the outside. And so the engineering of that to get everything to fit perfectly in that crystal tube was a true challenge, right? And but the efficiency of that system and the latitude that it gave us to change, production up and down was tremendous.
Absolutely.
And so, it's just all the innovations between the different processors that we now have in it and stuff. I mean, what people don't understand so many times is this is a small computer, right? That's both in the battery pack and in the actual system that communicate to one another to talk to get this coil to do what it does.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's been interesting. So in the process of developing that too, the clients, I'd watched so many of these videos and clients sending in all their, videos, and they're all operating with their units hanging upside down. And I began to understand why is basically the units as a whole. It had like a megaphone, a small area on the front side, and the bottom area was wide open where the fan was, right? Is it noisy? The answer is no. But when you're out there standing in the woods and it's just stone cold quiet,
Exactly.
then all of a sudden, yes, you hear it, right?
Yep.
And so people were running it upside down to kind of redirect the velocity of the noise upward. And it did make a dramatic difference. But I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that's not ideally the way the thing was designed. We can do better. And so in the process of doing this, the whole reason we changed the air intake to the top and we created a more efficient fan system, we were able to, number one, have the opening for the air intake be smaller rather than bigger where the fan was. That in itself decreased the perceived dB level. But then just having it on the top helped out significantly too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's the reason why the air intake went to the top, to feed the blower on the inside and else to help out with the noise mitigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, like you said, it's a whole new animal. And we all did that, right? We all did run them upside down, right? We talk about that all the time. Yeah. I say that over and over. I don't think deer hear it ever.
I don't think so either.
I can tell how many times I take it. When I first started here, I used to, when guys would call and I was hunting with it, I would take pictures and I would have pictures of deer literally below me. And we get guys off, oh, they hear it. I'm like, give me your cell phone one time. And I would send them pictures. I'm like, explain to me how this one didn't hear it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But could it impede your ability to hear? Yes, right? If it's a real calm day, you can hear any little squeak of your movement of your foot. And so again, you had that little speaker of the fan noise just kind of coming down on you. Well, now it's just not like that, right? The bottom, no fan, right? We're pulling that air in here. And like I said, with that blower system, it's really pulling it in a more concentrated way, which again helps with that decibel level.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, so you think about the units before, really we pulled the air in the bottom and then we turned it and pushed it out the front. Now we're pulling it in here. We're actually kind of turning it the opposite direction, pushing it over that coil and then exhausting it out the front.
Right.
Yep. So, and again, that really also helped lead to the entirely new look.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yep. I think that would be a good place, Scott, to kind of jump into, we've talked about the replaceable blower, we're talking about the blower. With that as well, that led to the redesign of the battery. If you could go into that a little bit and how that kind of fits all together in the platform.
Well, as we began to see that we were creating greater efficiencies within the system, and there was tons of pushback within the company, including U2 Coil. I mean, a lot of people wanted to maintain the same battery platform as the past. And we went back and forth trying to figure out how we could do that. But between the battery pack and getting the blower in there and the removable coil in there, it was going to be difficult to maintain the same battery complex in there
Right.
and then still keep the dimensions of the unit as small as we needed it to be. And the other thing was, our clients didn't really have too much to say about the battery longevity of the XL systems, but so many of them were like, if you could just make something where we could sit all day, all day. And so we were like, okay, so if we can go ahead and do this, if we can go ahead and get the unit to basically produce at these levels, then we worked at the battery componentry. What would it take to, with this battery, to literally give someone 13 hours in standard mode?
Right.
13 hours they can sit that's an all day sit no matter where you're sitting in the country, right? If you're in the other modes, you're going to get 8 to 9 hours, right? And so, it's one of those things that it was designed, okay, if we can get this, if we can get that kind of longevity out of the system where our clients don't have to own 3, 4 XL batteries, they can own one primary and then they can have one backup. And it basically has them covered. I mean, in the past, I would be traveling, I would have 6 batteries in my tub, just sitting there, right? Always just in case. Nowadays, we don't have to do that anymore. Right. We run with 2 and we're good to roll. And so we made the decision to change the battery pack system for this given unit just to give the clients the kind of longevity they need in the field and not have to own so many different batteries.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, and I really pushed back on the different battery that, I was like, oh man, because we hear that all the time. You know what I mean? With comparing the like the 230 to the 300, the 230 to the 500, right? And but again, when it came to fruition, and like I said, I'm a pretty impatient guy. Ask my wife, or ask Nick, or anybody else that works here. But when you look at up to 13 hours on standard mode, up to 10 hours on boost, and up to 9 hours on hyper boost, that made me happy. All my reservations went away because, again, so many people, you heard it at the shows. Yeah, man, it'd be great if I only had to carry one battery. Like they believe in it and they'll put it in their pack. But man, I got to have a couple batteries. If I'm going on a hunt, maybe I've got to have like 3 or 4. You know what I mean? Now to know that you, again, and when you look at the 20% more ozone output, you follow me? Yeah. And again, we always talk about standard mode is the mode for blind setups, closed air environment. But again, we're starting to push that ozone output. I mean, think about that. If you look at one to the next, HR600 was 45% more ozone, okay? Then with the 500, we went to 25% more on hyper boost. Now on the HR600, we're 20% more across the board compared to the 500. Plus, you still have hyper boost mode on top of that. Yeah. So standard mode on the HR600 compared to boost mode on HR230, you follow me? Yeah. You can get away with standard mode for up to 13 hours runtime. You're only having to have 2 batteries. Yeah, you know what I mean? If you really, really want to be skippy, just run the one. You know what I mean? If you're just the type of person that just goes in and you hunt on the weekends, like all the weekend warrior that you and I are, you hunt on a Saturday, you're doing an all-day sit, one battery will be fine. When you get home at night, plug it in, charge it up, goodbye the next morning.
Right, exactly.
Does that make sense? Yep. I think, Scott, that's a real good place to go to with talking about the battery internal charging, if you want to talk a little bit about that and, the thought process behind that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess going back to the battery thing, right? And so the one thing that all of our down here in Texas, we don't really have to worry too much about the battery life, too much down here. Up there in the Midwest, when you get to 20 degrees to minus 30, like when we go up to Saskatchewan, every battery system is going to get a little bit stressed, right? Because it's so cold, right? So, when we did all of our testing, the testing is basically, 30 degrees and greater. If it gets below it, sometimes you're going to get a little bit of the waning of it. And so, I mean, but, for the most part, the battery system, if there's anything we've developed over time is we try very hard to make bulletproof batteries. Yeah. Because batteries are what run this bugger, right? And so, I just want everybody to know that when they're using it, it gets extremely cold, to have a backup of some sort a little bit, right? Because you just don't know,
Well,
what that cold will do to it.
we always talk about that inside a lithium ion battery, like any battery, it's a chemical reaction happening.
Yep.
Right. And when you start to take the temperature down, and like you said, we all hope for a 15, 20 degree morning in November. Man, we'd love to have a morning like that in October. If there's a 20 degree morning in October, I'm calling in sick. You know what I mean? I've got a cold today, but so when it does get cold, and we hear people calling like, well, it said I was going to get up to this, but I'm not getting it. Well, dude, if it's 20 degrees, that's the reality, is that chemical reaction happening less. We've heard this over and over. If you run your battery and it runs and it's a 20 degree day and you run it till that unit shuts off, you could take that battery back to your house, put it on your shelf, on your workbench, let it sit there, warm up, put it back in the unit. It'll turn right back on. It'll probably say 25% battery life too.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's just that chemical reaction happening. Right. Yep. And so again, 30% more ozone on the HR600. It's giving you that little extra. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Not even a little extra. 30% is a lot.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? So it's a big jump.
It is a major jump. It's just that, for all of our clients out there and stuff, if anything is, I'm a consumer too, right? I am, right? And so I want everybody to shoot utterly straight with me, but I mean, it was designed to be able to give everybody all day sets. That's what it was designed for, but in regards to the charging system in the backside of the unit is, for me, I would always bring, like I told you, like when we go on our hunts, wherever I was, or elk hunting or whatever, I'd always bring all these extra batteries. I had extra cups, and we'd have lines of just cups and batteries.
It was a surge bar with chargers going off of it.
It was. And so, my whole thing is that it's just more gear when I'm traveling that I have to pack, right? And so if it was me, I probably would want to kind of have the extra battery around, but I'm like, how do I want to charge it without bringing all these cups? And I'm like, well, one of the ways we can do this is we can put the charging system and build a docking system within here with the new program we have and be able to allow people to charge it right within the unit. And we played with that for months, and we finally were able to make that happen. And I think it was one of the wisest innovations that we really did, to have a removable battery system with a docking system within the unit. Mm-hmm. And so theoretically, you could charge one battery. You come in after the hunt, in the fall, you may be getting in by 5 o'clock. So it gets dark pretty early, and you're basically you don't even have to take your battery out. Just go ahead and plug it in and let it do its thing. Go eat dinner. And within a couple hours, you're going to get, 80% more charge. And if you wanted to get a little bit more on it right before you go to bed, you could change your one other battery out if you had one, just right in the same docking station. Yep. And so the goal was to not have to carry a bunch of cups. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we were trying to do for that. So we're at the end of the day, we're just at the end trying to streamline everything we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, the other big thing to say too there is with that charger on the back, it has light on the back, just like the charger cup would on the front.
Yep.
That goes red when it's charging and green when it's done.
Yep.
So when you've got that plugged in, you can very clearly, just walking by while you're charging it at night, you can see, okay, I'm charged up or I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
So it still has that same process within when it tells you it's done charging. Mm-hmm. So it's right there on the back of the unit, which is nice because you're obviously probably going to have it plugged in and it's just going to be kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can see it.
Yep.
Yeah. No. So then let's jump into, which is funny because I really like how this is going because I feel like, the design started with a replaceable coil.
Yep.
And then, like you said, within the replaceable coil and trying to go to a whole new design, that led to the blower. Yep. That led to the way that the air comes in and out. Well, then that led to a whole new battery.
Yep.
Well, then all of a sudden, the way the coil and creating back pressure and the innovation of that and the innovation of blower led to more runtime.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So then just all that in and of itself, and then charging on the back.
Yep.
Just like he's saying, streamline. Again, we didn't mention this, but just like the replaceable coil, the battery is keyed. So if you try to put that battery in upside down, I ain't going to go in. Right? You can press and press and press. It just doesn't work. So then, looking at in front of that coil, which kind of funny because all that we just mentioned in and of itself, I think anybody, me as a hunter consumer myself, is going, okay, yeah, that's all pretty stinking awesome.
Yeah.
Then the batteries, the indicator lights have been completely redone on top of everything else.
Yep.
Instead of them being on the front like they were before, now we're looking at them on the bottom, which we heard from people. We heard it. So Scott, if you can go into the buttons, the lights, the indicators, if you can kind of talk through that as well, that'd be great.
So whether you're using the unit out of a blind, whether you're using the unit in a tree, most of the time it's sitting overhead, right? For the most part.
Yep.
And so there was nothing worse than for me standing up in those trees and, however high I am 14, whatever, however high they hang some of those suckers. And I'm hanging off the front of it to see the front of the unit of how is it going? We know how much battery is left. What, is it still running? All that other kind of stuff. And it was like, I'm just thinking, it's like that is just absolutely stupid, right? And so then we developed the app in regards to being able to see it in real time on the 500 platform.
Yep.
But I'm still of the type, like, just to get on the podcast here with you folks today, I had to install an app to get in here to do this. And you guys were patient and waited for me because I'm not of your generation where I'm not a big fan all the time of all these apps and this and that. And so I'm like, I can do that, but I just want to push a button. I want the dang thing to work, right? I just want to turn it on and let me do what I go do, right? And so basically the power button now is on the bottom of the unit. So once it's mounted up there, I can go up there and I can just turn the thing on and toggle it to whatever mode I wish. I can hit the light button right over by the light and I can turn the light on. I can turn the light off. I can run it through the app. I can do whatever I wish. But at the end of the day, I want to see it, right?
Yeah.
I want to see it. And once you learn the indicators of the lights, which are very well indicated once you're holding it in your hand, and I have my glasses, but I wear bifocals, right? Like I said, I'm not 20 anymore, so it's kind of hard for me to see all that stuff, the printing on the thing. But the indicators of the lights were designed that you don't have to read squat. It's designed to turn on, you toggle through, you can see where you're at, and you're running, right?
Yeah.
And so it was designed for, at the end of the day, for the individual to be up there in the tree, in the blind, be able to turn it on and just let Ozonics eat. Let it do what it was designed to do.
Yep.
And so that's the reason why everything was put on the bottom.
Yeah, and like you said, I think to go back to what Scott said there, man, we've all been there. And again, I love our other units, you know what I mean? But I've been there where I wanted to put it on hyper boost mode and I accidentally pressed the power button instead.
Right. Yep.
Well, now I'm going completely the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And then, like you're saying, then you're kind of trying to rubberneck around and it all creates movement, right? I always think for me, bow hunting is a sport of close. Bow hunting becomes a sport of variables.
Yeah.
Right? And I know for me, I'm trying to eliminate variables. Unfortunately, the biggest variable of all is me.
Right.
Because, geez, look at me right now. I can't sit still. I'm like, if you put a step counter on me in a tree stand, I figure out a way to get a couple hundred steps in, right?
Yeah.
I'm just constantly moving, right? And so I have to be very aware of the variable that I am in the movement that I'm creating and the noise that I'm creating. And again, having those buttons now right on the bottom, it's literally a finger press away.
Yeah.
All I have to do is just go like this. All I have to do is, if I am using the app, I can press the app. I just can glance right up. I'm eliminating those variables.
Right.
And if you're the guy that doesn't like to use the app, again, it's all right there.
Yeah.
When you're looking at with this unit above your head, the mode indicator lights are toward the front of the unit. The battery indicator lights are closer to you.
Yep.
Just like our other units, every time you press that mode button, your battery indicator light is going to light up.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, we've talked about, we've heard from customers for a long time, man, I'd love to have those batteries on the button, or I'd love to have those buttons right on the bottom. You know what I mean? And like you said, to see this all come together, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, and I said this in our previous podcast about the 600 is, I think my favorite part about the whole unit is that it's built around a purpose. It's
Yep.
built around so many new things, and that's why it looks like it does. That's why the buttons are on the bottom, and I just love that aspect of it. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's pretty killer. Yep. And then I think the last thing to really talk about here is the overmold. even the overmold. I remember hearing about like having this on the side and the slants, and I was like, man, I just cannot envision that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then to see it, it's exactly what he was trying to describe. I mean, like I said, that rubber overmold, it just makes it super, super quiet.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It just makes it quieter.
Well, it's crazy because it's just, I'm big into just utter functionality. I just want it to work. I
Yes.
want it to be easy to use. I want it to be very intuitive. I am not an industrial designer, so getting the sexiness and this and that, that's not my thing, right? And so, when people would come to me and about this and that, and just, it was kind of fun. And they'd be like, well, what about this? And I'm like, well, no, that won't work. Cause I'm like, now you have a water issue. And so, you'll see on the tops of the units, there's like little grooves on the different tops of the units that direct even though we don't want people using it when there's moisture outside.
Yep.
If there is any condensation or water buildup, it was designed to drain it in such a way where it gets it away from the air intake or from the input.
Right.
And there's little drip lines on the inside of the unit. So if there's any condensation or, any issues like that. So it's sort of like when you go through these things, it's like one thing you kind of people high five and they get excited about it. And then I'm like, yeah, but what about this? And so then, you're always going back to the drawing board and, everybody's like, well, why don't you need to have more reiterations? You need to have products coming out more in a sequence or quicker. And I'm like, well, how about having fewer products come out, but make them right?
Yes.
And so that's kind of our thing. That is our focus as a company is that innovation is not just a word. Innovation should be something where you're truly changing and disrupting. Forget about disrupting other aspects of the industry. I want to disrupt us, right? Yeah. I want to, as we develop products, even though we create oxidation-based products, I want the actual tool to challenge all the previous tools that we've created, right? Yeah. That we progressively just become better and better. And so to come out with products just like boom, 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 it's very hard to do that, right? And truly have it have a meaning. What is the true purpose for what you're doing? And so the true driver was, yes, the coil, right? Because I needed consumers to have that in their hands to maximize the effectiveness of the unit. Every time they went out, it was in their hands from now on. All the other stuff from batteries to all these other things were just evolutions of understanding the coil system first. So it was really kind of a God thing that our focus was that because it drove everything else. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so it was good. And all you guys there for sure had huge inputs on that. And I appreciate you being there and all the input you had for us during that whole journey. You guys were great.
Oh,
Patient.
yeah.
Patient, frustrating a little bit working with me, but I appreciate it.
No, yeah. And I appreciate that, Scott. And like I said, I heard this years ago and I think this is so good. Buddy actually said this, he goes, when new gear comes out, to Scott's point, it's like you want the new gear to put your old gear out of business.
Yeah.
And this, man, I mean, I feel like if I was a guy that bought a 500, I'd be like, dang, you know what I mean? You're like, if you have an HR600, you're sitting there, oh, that thing's pretty cool.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And we've all been there,
100%.
Yeah, you've got that, whatever it is, whether it's a bow or an e-bike or, you know what I mean? A rifle or any of that stuff. And you're holding it and then the new one comes out. You're like, oh, I really want that one.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what this is going to do. You know what I mean? And it does. It is disrupting our whole thing. You know what I mean? Because it is such a whole new animal. Square peg, round hole.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The HR230, the HR300, the Orion X, the HR500, they're all great units. I'm not trying to say that this one's good and that one's bad, right?
Right.
They're all great units, but again, from a platform perspective and from a design perspective, this is a whole new animal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
And I think that, for so many of our folks that have been out there using our products, it's amazing because we try to have this understanding that, we have a couple 100,000 or more, whatever, end users, but really at the end of the day, the number of end users, because so many of our consumers that are truly get it, they own more than one, right? They own more than one. And the reason they do is when they travel with a few extra arrows. Many of them bring an extra bow just in case. And they're just like, I just don't want to go out there and screw this up. So I always bring an extra Ozonics. And then the people you find now over time, I see some of these guys, especially a lot of the professionals in their camera crews, they're running with 2, 3, 4, and I'm like, why in the world are you running so more? They go, hey, we need to get back to our families. We have a life outside of this.
Yeah.
And so every opportunity we get counts, right? And so we do everything in our power to knock that order out so we can close the deal and get home.
Yeah.
And that's when it just kind of resonated to me, is just like, I understand now why so many of our end users, sometimes will hunt with an extra unit, in the tree, right? Just to maximize their efficiency, because environmental conditions change and challenge the product at times. And that's the beautiful part about it, right?
Yep.
But, so I tell our end users that use our product, that, consider that, is that having that backup is not a bad choice.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, when you were within all that, Scott, what made me think of is how I first met Scott when I was guiding in Colorado. Mm-hmm. When I saw it work, it came down. The first thing it came to me is I was like, holy cow, this is going to give me more opportunity.
Yeah.
Guys always want to talk about success. Guys looking at, as non-residents coming to Iowa or going to Missouri, going wherever you're going, they always talk to outfitters. They always want to talk success rate. Outfitters guys don't like talk success rate. They like talk opportunity.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
My job as a guide is to get you an opportunity. Now, what you do with that, that's up to you. But for me, when I saw Ozonics work, I realized, holy cow, I'm going to start maximizing opportunity.
Right.
You follow me? And that's what I feel like we talk a lot about now. We talked a lot about that in the last couple of years, maximizing opportunity. Geez, oh, Pete. Man, I don't know how much maximizing opportunity, that is the HR600.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yep.
Because the reality is just to Scott's point, I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Imagine if you lived in Pennsylvania. You can't even deer hunt on Sundays.
Yeah.
You got a full-time job. You work 5 days a week. You can't hunt on Sundays. And you can't get off of work. So your day is Saturday.
Yep.
And the wind's wrong. Or it's just not a right wind for that stand. And that's the only place you can go. What are you going to do? It's about, people always say, oh, it's about hunting the right day on the right stand on the right wind. No, it's about hunting right now.
Yeah.
You follow me? And so if I can maximize that opportunity and I can get back to my family or get back from that trip, does that make sense?
Yep, 100%.
So like, that's what this HR600 really does.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear you talk about that, Scott. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, and I appreciate you guys getting me on, spending a little bit of time, letting my wife break away here and just get to do this. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys up there in Iowa and just you guys digging in the way you do all the time. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate that entire crew up there.
Yeah.
And what you do. And I know all of our folks out there that are listening that are our end users appreciate our customer service team that pours their heart into every time somebody calls. If they don't get to them, they call them right back as soon as they can, and they resolve their issues. And, there's a lot of value to having great people in the heart of big deer country up there in Iowa. And so I thank you for everything you're doing there.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, Scott. Yeah. No, thank you, man. Like I said, it's we just had Susie on. And actually it's been kind of fun. Actually, Scott's youngest daughter, Delaney, is actually working here in Mason City. She just started the other day.
Yep.
And it's funny because I've worked with all of his daughters now. You know what I mean? I've worked with Sierra here and there over the years, and I work with Mackenzie day to day. And you talk to her a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
You know? And then now Delaney's here. But like one of the things I said to her just the other day, and she's just literally on the other side of the wall here, working with the gals, is the one thing that I think is the theme across the board, whether it's customer service, whether it's from Scott's side of things, working on the business a lot with the design, the innovation of the product, right? From the marketing and the advertising and everything that we're doing, we really, really care.
Yes. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? We really, really care.
Yep.
I mean, from the day that I met Scott, I knew that about him, right? When I got done with what I was doing out west, sometimes this whole quote unquote hunting industry, right? If you have the opportunity to kind of get on the other side of the fence of it and you see it, there's a lot of good, but there can be a lot of bad, And I remember when I left what I was doing, I went home, told my wife, I said, there's only one guy that I'll ever work for moving forward. One guy. And I said, it was Scott Elrod.
Yep.
I said, I won't work for anybody else because unfortunately, sometimes in this whole thing, it can be really cutthroat. It can be, it's not always sunshine and lollipops.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yep.
And so I think sometimes, and we've talked about this before, this whole scent control category, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of people that over the years have scoffed at us because they've had bad experiences.
Right.
You follow me?
Yep.
And I think at the end of the day, what is so exciting about Ozonics is that it really, really helps people. And I think it really, really helps people because at the thread of all of this, at the thread of this company, we really, really care.
Yeah, 100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, even hearing Scott talk about all the design, I mean, like I said, I try to leave Scott alone, but I definitely call Buddy and say, hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they hear, because I hear from customers.
Right.
You hear it at the consumer shows.
Yep.
Like we're hearing it on social media.
Yep.
And so we're listening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
But, well, thanks, Scott. I really, really appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks a ton. And like I said, listening to this right now, hopefully, man, I tell you what, it's really, really fun to kind of see behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It just, to me, it makes me even more excited.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. No, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. Keep up all the great work. Keep inspiring everybody up there. Take care of all of our folks.
Right on, man.
And I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Ozonics Killerwinds podcast over and out. Another one in the books. That might be one of the best ones we've ever done. That goes way up the ranks.
Yes, it does.
Right off the bat.
Yes.
Even as Scott was talking, I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Have fun editing this one.
Yeah,
the long one will be easy, but the micro clips, narrowing those down, that's going to be tough.
Oh, yeah. We'll get it, though.
Okay. All right. Another one in the book. Stay classy.
Yep.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye-bye.